Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. We are here talking about your inner life. Well, our inner life. Really, we're talking about our inner lives, aren't we, Laurel?
We are. We're talking about the collective, our inner life.
Inner life. Yes, yes. The collective our inner life. I'm reading a book right now by Rudolf Steiner. It's a very old book. It's called Theosophy. Oh, if you really want to go deep into some of the inner life and the more esoteric parts of the work that we talk about, there's a book for you. I almost wanted to do like a book club on it because I was like, ooh, so many layers here of soul, spirit, human form, all the things, and how we're interacting with the world and whether we're living into all these parts of ourselves.
Can
Very
you tell
cool.
us the name of it again?
Theosophy, like philosophy with a Theo.
Oh,
Yes, yes.
okay. And the
Yeah, so
author?
not religion, but very spiritual.
And the
Yes.
author?
Rudolf Steiner.
Okay.
That's very old, a very old book. Yeah.
We'll put
Been
that
around
in
for
the
a while.
show notes.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, so Laurel, that is not where we're going, everybody. Just hold on. We're not going to force you into a space that you might not want to go to. But we are going to invite you into a space that many people have resistance on, don't you think, Laurel?
I do.
I do too. So this, Laurel and I were just talking about, this is our fifth, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, end of the year shows. This is our fifth end of the year show.
It's amazing.
Wow. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
So if you are a more goal oriented person, if you love to focus on your word of the year, we have other shows where we've really focused on all kinds of things. This year, we're taking a little bit different lens, a little bit different emphasis on the end of the year processing. And Laura, we didn't come up with a name of the show. Hey,
It's the show to remain nameless.
that's right. That's right. Let's see the emotion of your year.
Your year of emotion.
Your year of emotions, your
We'll,
year in your emotional life, a year in your emotional life. I don't know. But we'll come up with it. You can see here, this is an example of how we come up with our name of our show, right? Tossed a few things out. Laurel tosses a few things out. I toss a few things out. And then Laurel usually goes, wait a minute, there's a pause, and she knows the title. That's usually how it goes. It's not me that comes up with the magic of the titles. Laurel Boivin can get the credit for that.
well, thank you. And
Yeah.
by the time this episode airs, we will have a title.
Oh, we will. We definitely will.
Yes.
And you'll know what it is because you'll have seen it before you listen to it.
But we know what the topic is.
We do know what the topic is, and it's a very important topic. And why we picked it is because, well, I guess because it's timely for what's going on in our lives, in our family lives, and the people around us, and also, I don't know about you, Laurel, but a lot of things that I'm reading now too are expanding more on emotional intelligence and the deficits that we have in our culture around our evolution in that way. And so we thought we'd just invite people into kind of a deeper look at how you might start to evolve yourself in this way,
Yes.
as an end of the
Developing
year.
developing your skills to not just identify your emotions, name your emotions, but feel your emotions.
Yes, yes. And then how they can help to guide you and help you process your life more fully and to feel, I think, more alive and connected with your authentic self, which I think is, so much an important part of what we talk about here in the show itself.
Really. And when you say guide you, right? Let your emotions guide you. I love to think about my emotions as a messenger, right? When I feel an emotion, when it comes up, I know it's coming up for me, so that I can learn and grow and live.
More fully.
Yes.
Right? And with
Yes.
more self-awareness. And I think that that's where the guiding part comes in with our emotions, right? So if we have a fuller understanding of our inner emotional experience, we have some language around it, we have the ability to be more forthcoming and authentic about what we're really feeling, to be more honest and upfront with those that we love and that we care about. that's part of how we develop the intimacy that we all crave in relationships, and then more self knowledge and more knowledge about the other person if they're willing to do the same, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so much, when I think about the growth that that I experience, I think, is it safe to say everyone experiences by learning about yourself and learning about others through the experience of emotion.
yeah, yeah,
And whether or not we have the same ability or capacity, it doesn't matter, how good you are at living in an emotion or with emotions.
mhm,
It's just the ability to recognize the the emotions and to recognize where you are in being able to live with emotions.
yeah. Yeah, and your comfort level. I was having
Yes.
2 sessions today with clients that where we ended up talking about resistance that was coming up around receiving love, receiving a sense of happiness, and opening to that fully, and the discomfort that can often come with that when we haven't had a lot of that experience, just because our nervous system doesn't. It's almost like a foreign object coming in, and they're like, I don't know what to do with this, right? If you haven't received a lot of
Yes.
full accepting love, unconditional love, and it comes in, it's kind of like, whoa, 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 you're gonna get a little leery. Your nervous system is like, I'm not sure I want this, I don't know what to do with this, right? And so part of it is our ability to, like, how to relax and open and take in all that good when it's coming our way.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
How do you manage your nervous system? And I think about this a
yeah,
lot when, you know, if there was a time that you experienced a lot of love and receiving a lot of love, and then you were hurt by it, your
yeah,
nervous system is even more on alert
right,
because of
right.
the past experience, you perceive as a threat in the present experience.
Yeah, yeah, so
Yeah.
true. So let's do a little bit of let's, I think what's coming in for me is, like, let's start with sort of the 4 basic emotional areas, and then we'll post some journaling questions. So I think the journaling question is kind of the same with all of them. Like, well, let's do the 4 basic areas. So the 4 basic areas that come up for me when I always think about, I go back to my Chinese medicine, learnings back in the day. So there's grief, there's anger, and there's fear, and there's joy. Those are kind of like if you did like a quadrant, right? Those would be the 4 quadrants. And then in each one of those quadrants are all it's like a color wheel, right? Where you start to have all the variations of color in all of them. And so I think that might be one way to organize this a little bit for people, is if you begin with, let's start with, we'll start with one of the hardest ones, which is grief.
Yes.
Okay. So if we look at the grief, right? What were your losses this year? What were you really sad about this year? What have you processed in terms of loss and sadness this year? What grief have you revisited? I think those are some of the questions that come up for me around that. When I think about the range of grief, right? Disappointment comes in. What were you disappointed about this year? What
Yeah.
didn't come to fruition that you had hoped would?
And I think the word loss is a really good one because, there is loss and disappointment.
Hmm.
You know, that what losses have you experienced? What hasn't met your expectations,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so those are big. And even maybe there's something with you experienced something that you wanted, but it wasn't
What you'd
exactly
hope for.
that's right,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
which is where that comes in.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would think about or question maybe is how how have you given yourself space to sit with the grief or to feel that grief, feel that loss?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you accepting of yourself as you process it?
Yeah. Yeah. And even to begin to do your own personal inventory about what grief have you moved through in your life? You know, what kind of really deep loss have you been through? And then, you know, how long does it take you to go through that? Is there, I mean, you might even acknowledge your rhythm to it, right? That first
Yes.
you resist it, then you come in and you start to look at it, then you manage it in a certain way before you really get into the depth of the feeling, and then suddenly it hits you or whatever. You know, I think we all have our own personal process around that.
Yeah. And I would say look at small grief too, because I think
Hmm.
one of the
Oh,
things that gets in
absolutely.
the way of processing grief is the judgment that we have that something isn't of the magnitude, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't that big. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Even the smallest disappointment or loss
Yeah.
can bring grief. And so
Yeah.
can you treat yourself with loving kindness and allow yourself, in a non-judgmental way to grieve over something?
Yeah. I always love, we've talked about this before on shows where we've touched on trauma or talked about trauma to a certain extent. And I always like to remind myself and remind others that you know, trauma has a quite a wide range, right? To a trauma that, you know, really changes you forever, to a trauma that other people would say, oh, what's the big deal, right?
Yes.
But it's still traumatic to your system. So any trauma is something where you have emotionally been impacted by it and you haven't had the opportunity to process it well and go full circle where you kind of heal in that time from it, right? So it just kind of sits in your system,
Yes.
and that's how we get triggered, you know, how we get trauma triggered, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the next one?
Next one, I'll go to the next one that I find many people have trouble with. Of course, it was mine. That was my big one, was anger. Anger.
Right.
Yeah. What have you been angry about this year? What are you still angry about? What are you holding on to your anger for this year? You know, what are you not ready to do forgiveness? I mean, with all anger, there's some forgiveness work to be done eventually. You know, what
Yes.
are you angry about that you're still holding on to that you're blaming other people for, right? And this is big too in the world today, right? Where we've got this blame for these political parties and these people for doing this and these people in government for doing that and all this blame, 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 right? And so we're angry about something and we're trying to shove off, you know, that responsibility of actually doing the inner work of dealing with the anger and how are you going to manage that issue in your life and then what are you going to do with that anger and how are you going to contribute the way you want to contribute, right?
Yeah.
So lots there
There is a
around.
lot there. One of the questions that comes to me is, how is your anger serving you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then maybe even, who other than you is your anger serving?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because recognizing those things help us, maybe to dissolve it.
I feel like that's a great. I always go back to my basic lesson with all my clients, and you know, it's in my books, it's everywhere. Is anger and boundaries, right? Anger, and boundaries want to follow anger. So once you set boundaries properly, the anger generally dissolves, right? Forgiveness work, boundary work will all alleviate anger in the long haul. And so, as you said, you know, anger is serving you either to motivate you to set boundaries or it keeps a boundary in place because you haven't been able to resolve it in its fullness, shall we say.
Yeah. So I'm so curious about the forgiveness work. And so how do it's like a combination of forgiveness and boundaries that dissolve anger, or can it be one or the other instead of both? I mean,
Yeah, I think the boundaries, once the boundaries are in place, that are appropriate for you, that helps keep you from entering a repetitive situation or a pattern, right? Which is often where we go, which often what trauma leads to is these patternings that we find ourselves in where they're self-limiting or self-defeating or they're unhealthy in our relationships. And the way that we change that is by looking at saying, look, I have to speak my mind. I have to set limits in my life with people that aren't respectful to me or harmful to me or whatever it is. And then once I've set those boundaries and they're where they need to be in my life, then I can forgive them and then I can move on, right? But without the boundary, it's hard to forgive because it's usually a repeating pattern, especially
Yes.
if somebody close to you. Yeah,
Yeah, and it reminds me of sometimes the forgiveness work is forgiving ourselves. And so for
absolutely.
instance, if it's a new boundary
Hmm.
and the the anger you're carrying is tied to an old
Event, situation.
event,
Yeah.
right? I was thinking of an offense, right? When you've been
Right. That
injured
too.
or
Yep.
hurt, right?
Yeah.
But it's old, right? The forgiveness of yourself for not having the boundary at the time that the event happened, or
Yes.
the lack of boundary that led to the event happening,
Yeah.
is really interesting because we can forgive others, but sometimes it's the self forgiveness that we really need to get into to be able to make peace with the anger.
Yeah, absolutely. We did a whole show on anger, and went through my 5 things around anger. And this is one of the topics that we talked about and went into
Yeah.
more depth in. So if you're struggling in this area, let's put that show in the show notes, and then that way people can refer to that one. I
Yeah.
feel like it was 5 lessons in anger or something like that.
And we also, I think it was our first season, we had a guest on who talked about grief. And so we'll
Yes,
put the grief
Susan.
episode
Yeah.
in the show notes as
Yeah,
well.
that's great. Yeah, yeah, that's really good. Yeah, so anger, as you can see, friends out there, there's so much around anger that's useful. And anger, again, is your guide for helping you set good boundaries, get clear in your values, organize your closer inner circle, all the things, right? And so that show goes into all of those things in more depth.
Yeah.
And it really is a helpful guide. And when you're using it well in your life, I mean, I don't just stay stuck in anger anymore. And I was I had a lot of trouble with anger in my early years. It was lessons that I really needed to learn. And so I feel like I embody them well, right? Which is
Yeah.
why they come so easily to talk about it too. Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you say you don't get stuck in anger anymore. I rarely experience anger.
Yeah.
And so when I do, I know, oh, there's something unhealed there, something that needs work, something that
Yeah.
needs my attention. And it is, it's lovely not to feel anger frequently.
Yeah. And also, one of the things as you're talking about this, Laurel, is thinking about a kind of generalized anger towards, let's say, maybe a religion or, a hierarchy in the religion or a government or the townspeople, however they're running the town, or like in a kind of a generalized thing is some of the bigger work in anger, if that's where you're sitting, is it's a deeper value system work for yourself. And then it's also kind of your life philosophy of how you're thinking about things and what is the reason we're here and living in the world. Like that can become like a deeper investigation, self-investigation for your work, which I think is important for all of us. I mean, if that's where you find yourself, then you're here to do some bigger self-investigation work, and good for you is what
Yeah.
I say. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Ooh,
Okay.
all right. Fear,
Next. Now, fear,
fear.
I like to think of fear as one of two core emotions, and it's a big one because it shows up a lot. So what do you have to tell us about fear?
Well, fear. Wow. So fear is a survival instinct, right, to keep us alive. So we don't want it to go away. And a lot of times, I think when people are coaching people or talking about fear, it's like you need to relinquish your fear. It's like, well, I don't want to don't relinquish your fear altogether because it's going to keep you alive in the world, right? So we don't want that. What we want is to understand our fear and make friends with it in a way where we know when it's coming up to keep us safe and when it's just a pattern that is connected to trauma, that's connected to maybe some soul work we came here to do, and it's self-limiting, right? It's really limiting our lives, and that's the important part of fear, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I love I mean, I love to speak to my fear and I often name it, right?
Yeah.
Hello, fear, my oldest friend. What do you have to tell me today? What can I learn today? And so, really looking at fear as a messenger,
Mm-hmm.
it is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is, we need it, it is to keep us alive.
Yeah.
But when I think about, if you have dreams and goals and want to move forward in the world, or even want to be part of the world, the evolution of society or living better in humanity, like I do look at my fear as what is it protecting? How is it protecting me? What is it protecting me from?
Yeah.
And is the situation on the other side of my fear worth feeling a little wobbly about, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and so being able to be in relationship with your brain and nervous system, and so you recognize what it's bringing up, but you in a safe way override your nervous system
Yeah.
for the good of something bigger. And I don't mean putting yourself in harm's way,
Right.
but just making yourself more comfortable with the unknown and making, you know, talking through your nervous system to your nervous system about that you are safe
Yeah.
and it's okay to feel a little fearful.
I think public speaking is such a great example of that
Oh,
one, don't you? I feel like
yes.
most people can relate to that because most people, many people, not most, but many people are, talk about how they're so afraid of public speaking, right? And I know for me, I've had my own personal journey with that,
Yeah.
uh, and it can be quite the nervous system agitator, right? And
Yes.
so this is when we've talked and we've had shows on this, stepping outside your comfort zone, right? Moving beyond your comfort zone. Like your nervous system has to learn how to adapt to the situation to know, look, nothing, the worst thing that's going to happen here is I'm going to forget what to say, right? And I've got to have
Yes.
a plan for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of my favorite examples that I use with clients a lot is if you can remember the first time you got behind the driver's wheel in a car, maybe it was when you were in driver's ed learning to drive.
Mm,
Can you feel that nervousness, the fear, that started when, or that you lived with, that you felt when you were learning to drive?
yeah.
And I love this example because we all go into learning to drive knowing there's something glorious on the other side of it.
Mm,
But there's fear there.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
do
So,
think all of that of,
yeah.
you know, being more comfortable in your growth zone
Yeah.
is different when the emotion or the situation isn't going to
Life
harm.
threatening.
That's right,
Yeah.
life threatening, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, for your inventory, if you're looking back and going like, okay, in 2025, what was I afraid of? What caused a lot of fear or anxiety in me? Now, here's the caveat for this topic, right? Is a lot of people want to put anxiety and fear together in a bucket. And I like to separate them out. I like to tease them apart. And I like to think of anxiety as what is produced when we're resisting emotion. So there's a little difference between fear and anxiety, right? If you're afraid of something and you're resisting the fear of it, or you don't want to acknowledge the fear of it, that can now show up as anxiety. There's a subtle difference between those feelings. And again, we talk about the subtleties of this work. This is one of them, right? Of really understanding your emotional experience. And you can be anxious because you've been resisting sadness or disappointment or anger or any of the things, right, can cause that kind of anxiety.
Yeah.
So as you're doing your inventory, you might want to look back and say, okay, what was I really anxious about this year? And what maybe was the feeling beyond the anxiety? Was I afraid of something? Was I angry about something? Was I disappointed in something? Was it something I didn't want to look at, right? To investigate maybe what emotion you're not that comfortable with or you don't want to process. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to get to these four core emotions.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
is.
It's really
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, the more that we can learn how to process our anxiety in a more direct way, right, rather than just trying to get rid of it first altogether, is really helpful. And I'm saying, and look, a lot of people have a lot of anxiety stuff going on around chemical, hormonal imbalances, things like that. Those have to be dealt with too, and sometimes medication is required for that, at least
Yes.
for short term. So we don't want to poo-poo all of the possibilities that are out there for helping you
Yes.
move through
Yeah.
and really work with your emotional state.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And our final one, which we've saved, what the best for last, sometimes the hardest for last for some people, which is joy,
joy.
right? Which for me is joy, love, bliss, happiness, contentment, like all of these range of feelings, right? And they're connected to often, right, what we really want and what we think will bring us the happiness we long for in our lives. And yeah, so what was joyful this year in your life?
Well, I love the inventory. And when I think about joy, the thing that comes up for me is if I'm not experiencing joy where I thought I would, there's the loss, there's the disappointment. However, I always look at trust. Is where is my trust? And is it lack of trust that keeps me from experiencing joy?
Ooh, Laurel, this is a very interesting lens in which to look through, and I'd like to know more. Yes.
I spend a lot of time thinking about what gets in the way of joy.
Yeah.
What brings you joy is one of the very first questions I ask a new client.
Yeah.
And so many people in their adulthood no longer know what brings them joy. And so
Yeah.
when we start peeling back the layers of what gets in the way of joy, it might be fear, but what's underneath the fear is not having trust. It might be anger, and that might be there's not enough trust, right? It could be, again, grief tied to disappointment. But when I think about trust, it comes into two places. Trust for yourself,
Yeah.
which probably is the foundation of joy.
Yeah.
You have to trust you're worthy of joy. You have to trust that you can feel joy and not be disappointed when you don't feel joy.
Yeah.
You have to trust that you're capable of experiencing joy,
Yeah.
and then trusting other people, and not that they'll bring you joy, but trusting other people that you're in a safe situation, so your nervous system is ready for joy, and then trusting the situation. So I think there's so much trust as an underlying component of an emotion.
Oh, this is excellent. This is excellent, Laurel. I am so happy that we got here. I do. I just feel like you really hit on something that's really such an important part of our self examination, right? And then our ability to look honestly at ourselves and our lives and the condition of our lives, right? So if there's chronic disappointment and you don't feel a lot of joy, are you trusting that your heart even knows, what it wants would is okay, right? And then how can you bring more of that into your life? And if you've lost your way around being connected to your heart and what you really want, how can you dedicate some time in the year ahead to reconnect with yourself in a way where what you might be longing for is worth pursuing and worth, starting to organize yourself and your life
Yes.
around. Yeah.
So much of it really is this inward, reflection. Because when we look externally for the solutions, often we can change the circumstances or find new resources, but we still don't have what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, don't you think that we've also have a certain kind of what comes to mind is almost like a superficiality around joy and
Yes.
pleasure, right? So sometimes hard work and accomplishment comes a joy with that that is like unlike any other kind of sense of fulfillment, right? But did but we there's a lot might be a lot of hard work and growth going on in there, but it's also bringing you a sense of satisfaction and joy and happiness and fulfillment,
Yes.
right? So this complicated, let's not keep it like light and simple. Oh, I just need to go out and buy myself a new pair of sheets for my bed made out of 100% Belgian linen, or I don't know, whatever it is. I don't know.
I don't know
Really.
either.
but yeah, it's that idea, right? We because of our consumerism, we've been materialized almost in a lot of ways about what can bring us joy and
Yeah.
fulfillment. Yeah.
It makes me think about, a vacation. We all dream of being away, and on an exotic Caribbean beachfront, where we can lay and read and someone will bring us cold lemonade or whatever else you want to drink. And
Yeah.
you can be in that situation, but still be disappointed or still have
Right.
fear or still have grief. And
Right.
so it just reminds me of it is not, you know, joy is not always just the result of having something. I like
Right.
to think it's the result of
Yeah. A certain way
being
in
a
the
certain
world. Right.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree.
And then the last thing I want to say about joy is changing your language around joy, right? Or changing your
Mm.
language so that, I use the word delightful a lot. When I started using the word delightful, people would look at me like, what is that
Are you
word?
from the 1900s?
Yeah,
What are
I
you? I
know,
don't even
right?
know where you. Where are
But
you?
but I say joy filled instead of joyful. And
Yeah.
it reminds me of there are certain levels of joy,
Yeah.
and there are different ways, when we say happy, right? Are you happy today? Sometimes I don't know if I'm happy, but when
Yeah.
I'm delighted, I know when I'm delighted, right?
Mm.
When I'm inspired, right? Inspired could be joy. Like
Yeah.
what's the language that means that I'm better than fine, that I'm fully alive and experiencing joy?
Yeah, that's so good. It reminds me of a book I started reading. We'll put it in the show notes, Laurel. I'll have to get it and give it to you for the show notes. But it's something like Your Unhappy Brain or something like that. It's
Mm,
been, I was started reading it and I will finish it, but it's amongst my books, my learning books, which I take in bits and pieces here and there with different topics. So what the doctor is sharing is that, your brain is not going to stay on all the time in a joyful state. Like we've been led to believe in a lot of ways through our culture that we're supposed to be happy all the time. Ain't happening. Our brain is not wired that way. It's not going to produce those chemicals constantly. And if it was, it would just have to keep upping the amount of chemicals because we'd have to keep feeling to get the same feeling. It'd be like a drug, right?
yes,
So yeah, this idea of, and also in Chinese medicine, that was one of the things that we learned. Too much joy is just as it's like a pernicious evil. It's not healthy for you to be constantly in that state, right? Because
yes,
producing that chemical in your body constantly would be good for you. So this idea of being in a neutral space is okay, right? We don't have
absolutely.
to be joyful all the time.
No,
But if you've lost your way and you don't know what brings you joy, that is something that needs to be investigated. Yeah.
right. And I do think that joy is something we should feel every day, not constantly, but I
Right.
think about like our emotions, right? Being able to feel the height of joy
Yeah.
and still be able to be content when you're not feeling that, or to feel the low of grief, but still be content, right? And it
Yeah.
reminds me, I know what was coming up for me was think about the last fiction book that you read. And when you're in a fiction book, what do you love about reading fiction?
Mm,
I'm going to give my experience. I love the messy mix of emotion that shows up on the page in a good fiction book. From
yeah.
start to finish, there's multiple emotion.
Yeah.
Someone might, be experiencing all of the emotions. And that's what keeps the reader in the story. Yet
Yeah.
when we think about our own life, we
Yeah.
want joy all the time. That would be the most boring book there is.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. The variety,
yeah,
so important. And also, again, it's this idea of how when we talk about the beautiful work and we talk about wanting a beautiful life, right? It's the the crafting of your beautiful life involves a lot of self-knowledge and self-awareness, right? So our conversations are always about this, right? So this end of the year invitation to you this year is let's start talking emotions. Let's start thinking emotions. Let's really do some review around that and help them guide you into the next year. What do you want more of? What do you want less of? I always feel like it's such an important piece of the puzzle as we look at going forward, right? Whether they're
yeah,
a goal or whether it's just kind of more of a generalized look at, I want more of this, I want less of that,
yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
I think, much like we set goals for ourselves for maybe our physical well-being, right? And a lot of times the goals are increasing your capacity. So when I was walking, increasing my capacity to walk a longer distance, right? Or a more elevation in my walks. I
Yeah.
always was testing my capacity and looking to increase my capacity. And so that's what I want to leave our listeners with emotional capacity. As humans, we have the capacity to feel a lot of emotions and
Yeah.
from one end of the spectrum to the other. And so, can we practice building our emotional, you said intelligence, I would say capacity,
Yeah.
so that we can feel a greater vastness of emotion and all, a quantity and quality, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
still be content
Yeah.
no matter where we are in that side. So,
Yeah.
and I also want to just leave our listeners with the inventory. As you think about these four primary emotions, grief, fear, anger, joy,
Yeah.
thinking back over the course of your year, right? Where did I feel those? What events, what experiences did I feel joy, grief, anger, fear?
Yeah.
And what did I learn through those experiences?
Yeah.
Because
The
I do
highs and
love
the
an
lows. Yeah. The highs and the lows, of all of them, right? What was the
yes,
low of the low and the high of the high? And yeah,
yeah,
kind of peak experiences and low experiences. And yeah. And then being able to like collect that from the year and then looking, going, okay, well, if I could craft my year ahead, right? So I was growing or learning more or more of what I wanted or whatever, where do I want to focus, so to speak? Or what am I going to allow in? What am I going to invite in? Yeah.
it's
Not
really
knowing
good.
where it's going to go.
That's right.
That's
Talk
right.
about fear, not knowing where it's going to go,
That's
but
right. And that's one of the
joy.
things about our beautiful inner work, right? Is are you willing to go where the universe and your soul want you to, grow and go? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Ooh.
love that.
Yeah. Well, Laurel,
Another
I
good
think this is,
conversation.
and I think it's another great end of the year conversation to round out, where we've been in the years past, right? So if you're looking like you want to do a really deep dive into your past year, you can listen to this one, go back and listen to the other ones and see what you can glean from those as well, because they're probably pretty different conversations than this one.
That's right.
Yeah.
It keeps getting better and better, Laurel.
I know. Well, we'll be back in 2026 for more, everybody. We're looking forward to it, aren't we, Laurel?
I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great year.
It's been a really incredible year. Thank you for a great 5 years.
Yeah, I know. All
Okay. All
right.
right. I'll see
Thank
you
you out
again.
there.
Bye for now.
Bye.